Today, we're going to go on an absolutely magical walk together. The Mist Trail is considered by many to be the quintessential Yosemite trail. And unsurprisingly, that makes it Yosemite National Park's most popular hike. The reasons are apparent. Beginning at the Happy Isle shuttle stop and trailhead, the Mist Trail allows visitors to trace the path of the Merced River as it plunges 2,000 feet before winding through the forests and meadows of the world-famous Yosemite Valley. This is Yosemite up close, wild and personal. But as the second most popular trail in the U.S. National Park system, it's not a trail for those seeking solitude. The Mist Trail draws as many as 5,000 hikers a day during peak season, roughly 300 of which have permits and aspirations of making it all the way to the summit of Half Dome, Yosemite's most famous peak. If you ask the internet, Half Dome is almost universally listed as one of the most dangerous hikes in America. It's a problematic title for a lot of reasons, but one that's based on a sliver of truth. The much sought-after bid for the summit has claimed approximately 30 lives since 1930, but the minority, 13 of those deaths, were hikers. Compared with other quote-unquote most dangerous trails, like Angel's Landing, which has claimed the lives of more than 15 hikers since 2005, the final stretch to Half Dome's summit, including the fabled subdome and cables, while precipitous and potentially hazardous for underprepared or foolhardy hikers, is not nearly as deadly as the internet would have you believe. It's in fact the Mist Trail, the shortest route to the Half Dome cables, that is Yosemite's deadliest trail. By some estimates, the Mist Trail is roughly twice as deadly as Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. The waterfalls alone have claimed more than 14 lives in a single decade. So, while undeniably beautiful and iconic, remain mindful of hazards like the river, waterfalls, cliffs, slick rock, as well as searingly high and dangerously low temperatures. As the first major landmark, the Vernal Fall Footbridge is the trail's most popular destination and frequently crowded with enthusiastic hikers snagging pictures. It's an absolutely heavenly spot that has some special meaning for me, having hiked to this bridge with my father, who at the time was in failing health and wouldn't survive another 3 years following our visit. Having grown up in Oakland, California, Yosemite was a sacred place for my dad, who visited the valley most years with his parents and sisters. Their family trips to this resplendent park numbered among the precious bright spots in a largely turbulent family life. And as a result, his love for Yosemite was deep and abiding. It's a love that he and I shared, and still share. And as one of the final places we visited together before his passing, this park is an especially sacred place for me, as it is for countless others who forge forever memories in this priceless landscape. Despite his many trips to Yosemite, my dad never passed beyond the Vernal Fall Footbridge to the wonderland beyond. And those with young children, including teenagers, and those with physical limitations, should carefully appraise their and their children's readiness before proceeding. Immediately adjacent to the Vernal Fall Footbridge, there is a water spigot. This is your last access to drinking water without a filtration system. So make sure everyone in your party has sufficient water for your journey before proceeding. Yosemite's water is some of the best in the world, and if I could, I would tap it straight into my house. I kid you not. At this point, a short way beyond the bathroom, the trail forks. If you would prefer that your clothes, shoes, and gear stay somewhat dry, then take the John Muir Trail to the right. But be forewarned, there are wet sections of the John Muir Trail as well, which we'll visit in just a few minutes. If you're okay being blasted with an icy mist, and want to experience the appropriate named Mist Trail in all its glory, then take a left and continue following the river. You can, of course, also visit later in the season when runoff has slowed for a more tame Mist Trail experience. From this point on, you have largely unrestricted and potentially treacherous access to the Merced River. While the word merced may mean mercy, grace, and forgiveness, This stretch of the river has brutally and remorselessly ferried inattentive and foolhardy hikers to their final reward. One such case occurred in 2017, mere days before my wife and I last hiked this trail. Several hikers witnessed a man in his 20s slip and fall along this stretch and vanish into the raging river beneath. I don't know if his body was ever located, and to my knowledge, though he's been identified by the Park Service, his identity has not been shared publicly. But there's little doubt in my mind that his death, among others, convinced park managers to install this hideous railing, which was added in 2020 along what the Park Service calls the Mist Trail's, quote, most treacherous section. During peak runoff, a fall from this portion of the Mist Trail into the frothing torrent below is as much a death sentence as falling from Angel's Landing or Half Dome. Once a captive of the Merced River as it rages through this gorge, there's little to no hope of survival. I truly mourn each life lost in this beautiful place, and for the loved ones that victims leave behind. But I also mourn the resulting guardrails, restrictions, and regulations that inevitably follow tragedies. There's a slow rolling shift occurring throughout our national parks and public lands that is fundamentally changing the wild spaces experience. They include the closing of the South Kaibab parking area in Grand Canyon to private vehicles, the addition of permit systems along the Half Dome cables, and now the chain section of Angel's Landing, as well as the installation of unnecessary barricades, which at best mar the landscape. On occasion, tragedies have even been used as license by land managers to close routes and locations to the public. One of the most heinous examples occurred in Utah in 2009, when state land managers destroyed and forever sealed the Nutty Putty cave system, following the tragic death of a young husband and father of two. While I consider the destruction of the Nutty Putty cave by Utah land managers to be completely inexcusable, it's harder for me to blame the National Park Service for putting up railings, given the extreme influx of visitors to our national parks, and the subsequent increase in emergency incidents, often placing search and rescue personnel themselves in harm's way. The Park Service has clearly resisted many of these changes, posted warning signs, and provided some great but underutilized resources. Despite those efforts, there's also a long history of people getting killed or injured, or tripping on a trail or over a cobblestone and trying to sue the Park Service because they unreasonably expect national parks to be childproof. By definition, wild spaces like national parks cannot be made perfectly safe without also completely losing their wild character. Railings and posted warnings don't belong everywhere, and should be mostly unnecessary. It's really up to visitors to self-monitor and accept the consequences of inattentiveness and reckless behavior. With a healthy appreciation of potential hazards and a firm grasp on your abilities and limitations, the Mist Trail isn't that dangerous. And there's no reason you can't have a safe and memorable experience while exploring this mesmerizing trail. As you approach the base of Vernal Fall, the inspiration for this trail's name becomes abundantly clear. After plummeting 318 vertical feet, the clear waters of the Merced River explode upon impact with the Granite Gorge, filling the air around you with the original Sierra mist. During heavy runoff, the mist from Vernal Fall turns every surface in the gorge into an unrelenting cascade, including the trail's winding stairway. While luxurious by hiking standards, these irregular and ragged stairs are unlike those you'll find in your home or an office building. So make sure that you remain attentive by taking deliberate steps while staying on official paths and away from steep slopes and fast-moving water. Now, I love trail running, but it's a bad idea to run on wet granite, steep steps, or crowded trails next to a raging river and steep drop-offs. If you're anything like me, you can't help but wonder who forged this trail in the first place. But as it turns out, the Mist Trail is as mysterious as it is beautiful. When President Abraham Lincoln signed the Yosemite land grant in 1864, transferring management of Yosemite Valley to the state of California, the trail to the top of Vernal Fall was already complete. And as far as I've been able to discern, no one knows who built it. Shortly after the state of California took over management, wooden railings and steps were added and ultimately replaced by the cobblestone stairway and iron railings that line the trail today. You might notice a few twisted expressions on my face in this video. That's because I completed a 22-mile hike the day before capturing this footage, and the mist was washing the sunscreen, bug spray, and sweat from the day before into my eyes and mouth. That's not information I generally volunteer, but it's definitely something that you want to be aware of if hiking the Mist Trail yourself, because if it's on your face, it will be in your eyes and your mouth during the hike. This stretch inevitably brings to my mind one of my all-time favorite quotes. Everyone needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul alike. It was Yosemite and the Sierra Nevada mountains that inspired John Muir to write those words, which so perfectly capture the true value of wilderness. Wild spaces offer so much more than simple amusement and pleasing scenery, and I invite you to enjoy exploring our natural treasures, but I also invite you to respect and protect them. They are far more precious and vulnerable than I think people generally realize. The final ascent to the brink of Vernal Fall hugs the cliff face to your right, eventually transitioning to a precipitous ledge only a few feet wide. So please remember to be patient and courteous. Hikers tend to get stacked up pretty deep along this stretch of trail, and while I generally dislike guardrails, this often crowded section definitely benefits from a sturdy railing. At the top, the narrow trail transitions into a large sloped flat with ample space for resting and refueling. Here you also have the opportunity to stand at the brink of Vernal Fall, which is an amazing experience, but just plan on waiting in line for your turn at the vertigo-inducing view at the fall's edge. Now, safety railings are abundant here, and you can probably guess the reason. Vernal Fall is likely the deadliest water feature in Yosemite National Park. Fatalities include a number of individuals that climbed beyond the railing at the brink and slipped and fell more than 300 feet to their deaths. 2011 saw perhaps the most tragic, painfully preventable, and instructive of these tragedies. A man and woman, having crossed the railing, waded into the river approximately 25 feet from the brink of Vernal Fall, and jokingly pretended to be caught in the river's current. Having been admonished and in some cases ridiculed for their foolishness, the couple returned to the proper side of the railing just as a copycat couple, ostensibly from the same group, attempted to reach a boulder in the middle of the river in order to similarly pose for a dramatic photograph. During their attempted crossing, the woman slipped and fell into the river. Her companion reached for her and fell in himself. Then a second man did the same and was likewise swept downriver. After witnessing the event, one onlooker said, "Everyone was screaming," adding, "What I will take away with me forever is the look on that grown man's face as he was floating down the river, knowing he was going to die, and nobody could help him." Two of the victims were hugging tightly as they fell over the brink to their deaths. These three number among 14 individuals who were swept over the brink of Vernal or Nevada Falls in just 10 years, none of which survived. And it absolutely breaks my heart to have to mar our journey together with horrific tales of preventable tragedies. But I don't dare omit this story. I see it constantly when exploring wild spaces. Once someone decides to shortcut a trail, cross a barrier, or disregard a warning sign, a cascade of others typically follow. Most of the time, the harm is limited to the landscape in the form of damage to trails, scenery, or the experience of others, which is reason enough to show restraint and follow basic trail etiquette. But copycat culture is also frequently the impetus for the most heartbreaking and preventable tragedies. Before stepping onto this, or any trail, I hope you'll commit to behaving respectfully and responsibly. Doing so won't only help ensure your safety and preserve the priceless spirit of wilderness, but your actions and example can and will set a tone for others. This extends to what you do and do not share on social media, where copy and paste culture is perhaps at its most potent. In my experience, railings and signs are far less impactful than the influence of friends, family, and yes, even total strangers. Above Vernal Fall, you again have access to the John Muir Trail, shown here. To continue along the Mist Trail, again, stay left. After hiking for a short section, the trail again opens up into a large area. Historically, this would have been the end of the Mist Trail, but a footbridge was added above what's called the Silver Apron in the 1870s in order to allow hikers access to Nevada Fall. Around the time that the original bridge was added, Albert and Emily Snow successfully lobbied the Yosemite Valley commissioners to allow them to build a hotel and toll booth nestled beneath Nevada Fall. La Casa Nevada Hotel and Chalet operated here until the late 1890s, eventually succumbing to advancing ice, an earthquake, and finally a fire in the year 1900. The structure's remains were then subsequently used as firewood for backcountry travelers. Today, nature has reclaimed the area where the once world-famous backcountry hotel stood, and I've got to say, I prefer it this way. From this point, you begin your final climb towards the brink of Nevada Fall, winding through misty mixed conifer forests littered with the debris from numerous rock slides. The trail is well worn and easy to follow, but as always, mind your step and be courteous to others. As you emerge from the trees, the overwhelming power of Nevada Fall becomes more and more apparent. The entirety of the Merced River plunges a dizzying 600 feet, crashing violently into the granite below, and ricocheting another 100 feet back into the air. This perpetual explosion of water is awe-inspiring and a testament to the raw, primal power of Yosemite's timeless landscape. From here, only a few hundred feet of elevation separate you from the top of Nevada Fall, effectively the high point of the Mist Trail. As you approach the end of the switchbacks, you'll notice a stark shift away from the refreshing mist that has thus far defined your journey. Above the falls, you're at your most vulnerable to the summer heat. So make sure everyone in your party is well hydrated and has enough to eat. There's no potable water to be had anywhere near here, which means filtration is your only option. Second only to falls, sprains, and fractures, heat-related illnesses and malnutrition are the chief causes of emergency incidents in Yosemite's backcountry. At the top of the switchbacks, you reach a critical junction with a pit toilet. Those heading to Little Yosemite Valley and to Half Dome Summit will take a left and head north. If you're one of the 300 people with a permit for Half Dome during the summer season, I wish you the very best and invite you to nurture a healthy respect for that mountain. The National Park Service has called the trek along the Mist Trail to the summit of Half Dome, quote, one of the hardest day hikes in the national park system. And it's definitely challenging, especially for underprepared hikers, and not to be attempted lightly. But having already thoroughly associated myself with the Mist Trail route, I wanted to mix things up on this visit. So in my next video, I'll show you a more challenging route to the summit of Half Dome, which I advise only veteran and extremely competent hikers attempt. So make sure to subscribe and ring the bell and get notified when that video drops. And if you're interested in joining the world of endurance hiking and covering marathon distances in the backcountry, make sure to check out my Rim to Rim video series, which includes bulletproof training, fueling, and gear breakdowns for endurance hikers. Returning now to the Mist Trail, if you take a right and head south from the toilets, you have less than a sixth of a mile to the brink of Nevada Fall. As with Vernal Fall, exercise good judgment. A plunge from Nevada Fall isn't just a guaranteed death sentence, but would be so brutal, it's unlikely there would be much left for search and rescue team members to recover. This is truly an awesome viewpoint, but be careful. There's a railing along the north side of the fall, but not on the south. So choose your steps carefully and avoid wet granite near cliffs or whitewater like your life depends on it, because it does. From here, you essentially have two paths back to the Happy Isle trailhead. Option 1 is return as you came along the Mist Trail, which is also the shortest and most direct route. But if you're hungry for more of Yosemite's mesmerizing landscape, consider taking the John Muir Trail by heading south from the bridge above Nevada Fall. From this point, the trail bends west, providing spectacular views of Nevada and Vernal Falls. And while generally drier than the Mist Trail, there are still wet sections along the John Muir Trail, especially in late spring and early summer. In 2023, the snowpack and spring and summer runoff were so extreme, it caused trail damage across the western United States. Along the John Muir Trail, a long crevasse formed along a cliff section, and I have no idea how or when the Park Service intends to repair it. So use good judgment and avoid the compromised portion of the trail, even opting to turn back if you deem it prudent to do so. Alright? Also, be forewarned that there is a great deal more exposure along the John Muir Trail, and sun protection, including sunglasses, is strongly advised. Upon reaching Clark Point, you're greeted with an iconic view of Nevada Fall, and the decision of whether to return to the Mist Trail above Vernal Fall or to continue following the John Muir Trail back to the Vernal Fall Footbridge. On this occasion, I opted to return to the top of Vernal Fall and retrace the Mist Trail back to the Happy Isle trailhead. If you're curious, I covered about 7.5 miles and gained 2,062 feet on this hike. The Park Service rates this hike as strenuous, but having previously covered more than 50 foot-miles over the previous 3 days, today's hike was kind of a nice cool down. But make sure you're prepared for whatever portion of this trail you tackle. Yosemite's Mist Trail is really one of a kind and can be calibrated to your schedule and skill level. Thanks to my dad's failing health, he was limited to the Vernal Fall Footbridge, and there's nothing wrong with that. For healthy, competent, and prepared hikers, the sky's the limit, with all kinds of options in between. Just remember to stay safe and be courteous to the land, wildlife, and your fellow travelers. As we wrap up, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. You guys are with me on every one of my adventures, helping me produce the very best travel resources found anywhere. And I want to find a way to show my appreciation. So once I reach 30 patrons on Patreon, I'm going to start doing live question-answer sessions and t-shirt giveaways. And I look forward to engaging with you more fully. So if you haven't done it yet, I hope you'll consider joining the Wild Spaces team on Patreon. Finally, there is a sacredness to wilderness, and I hope you've sensed that on our journey today. Wherever you live and whatever your circumstances, I hope you'll find the time to connect with and protect our precious wild spaces.